Face the final frontier. These are the continuing voyages of the Lost Guys. And today, we are going to be talking about Star Wars. No, I'm kidding. We are actually going to be talking about Star Trek, and not just any old Star Trek. Why are you talking about Star Trek, I hear you might ask? We just had this phenomenal TV show called Star Trek Discovery, which ended its critically acclaimed 5-season run.
You can stop now.
What? Okay, sorry. There was a Star Trek that should have been, which never was. And no, we're not talking about the animated series either. You might not.
Discovery never should have happened.
Yes. Well, we'll have plenty of time to rant about Discovery, I think, later on in this episode. However, prior to the end of the original 3-year series, after the animated series, and before Star Trek The Motion Picture, there was another. There was supposed to be... sorry, that was a Star Wars reference. Anyway, Star Trek Phase 2. Star Trek Phase 2 is what I'm talking about. Whoops, wrong photo.
How many of the Trekkies are we trying to scare off within the first few minutes?
May the Spock be with you. How about that? Star Trek Phase 2. So this was a continuation. I'm trying to think of the best word for this. It wasn't a new season of the original series. It was
sequel series.
A sequel series. Yeah, that's it. A sequel series of the original series. This was how it was originally pitched. And it was supposed to be a new batch of TV episodes, bringing back some of the familiar faces, Kirk and Bones and whatnot, but with some fresh new blood as well. And if that sounds familiar, it's basically the premise of every failed TV show in the last decade and movie. But
this was back before that was done over and over again, and it was done with brands that actually deserved it, because Star Trek had been canceled after it was supposed to be canceled after 2 seasons. For those who don't know, and they were going to pull the plug on it, but they got like 20,000 letters of people demanding for Star Trek to come back.
Real letters, not emails, by the way. Real handwritten.
Like you had to work for this. They even packed them away in business envelopes, so the people at Paramount would or NBC, whoever, were like forced to read them to make sure it wasn't like business inquiries or anything like that. So the show got renewed for a 3rd season. They put it in a 10 o'clock p.m. at night on a Friday in like the 60s. So yeah, that didn't fare too well.
They made it to die, basically.
Yes. But then it had just enough episodes to hit syndication, and then it started airing at times, when people were, awake and not out doing things. And it saved the series pretty much, because then kids got to see it more. The show got a bigger following then than what it did initially. So then they were starting to grow a bit more of a major demand for Star Trek. There were even conventions for it now.
All right. Hang on a second, Nolan. I got to interrupt here. So for you kids who are watching, there used to be something called a television. And on that TV, you had no choice but to watch whatever was airing on that TV. And what a lot of these companies would do is they would engage in something called syndication. And so they would fund these TV shows up to a certain episode limit. And once they were able to hit that number of episodes, they could then package them up kind of like, well, another outdated concept, I guess, which is like the DVD box set, and sell them off.
DVD.
Yeah, I know. And sell them off to other networks, who would then purchase basically the entire series and air them as fodder to take up space during late night or early morning, or any time when they aren't, you don't have the bulk of your audience watching that good old boob tube. And so, as Nolan said, that is the trick to how Star Trek became popular, basically. Like when it did its first run, it was underappreciated. No one really... it had its fans, but it wasn't really, setting the world on fire. But it was really with syndication where everyone started watching it, and, possibly inebriated late at night, or in the morning when they were having their breakfast, getting ready to go to work, or what have you. And they realized, wait a minute, this show is actually pretty darn good. Anyway, sorry, go on, Nolan, please.
Oh, no, good. I was actually about to wrap up there, but yeah, no, it really saved the series and it helps some demand. But I would say, where the Trekkies want to admit this or not, which I say it like Trekkies don't watch Star Wars, because I think in this day and age, I mean, I don't think it's really that much of a war, as I think if you watch Star Trek, odds are you watch Star Wars. But literally, when Star Wars came out in 77, what's that?
I would say it did. I get the impression that many of the fans of classic Star Trek, just like many of the fans of classic Star Wars, don't watch either anymore.
Yes. They can both coexist in being sad about what happened to their series. But on a happier note, it was 1977. Everything was booming. Everything was right in the world because George Lucas released Star Wars: A New Hope. It was the greatest movie ever made, better than any movie prior to that. And if you think otherwise, you're wrong. But anyways, the film was a huge phenomenon. And it meant the folks over at Paramount were like, we need money. I want some of that money. So they made Star Trek the motion picture. But before we got to that path, we had a little bit of a road to get there. And it's a kind of crazy story if you guys would like to start on some of the details of that.
Well, let's do that. I think before we do, however, we can jump into, well, you know what? Let's do the story first, because I wanted to focus on some of the main differences between what we would have gotten with Star Trek Phase 2 and what we ended up getting with Star Trek the Motion Picture. And I guess I'm kind of spoiling this and jumping ahead, but I think it's pretty much common knowledge that the motion picture, the movie, the very first one, like with the 15 minutes of beauty shots of the Star Trek Enterprise model and like the creation of that TV theme, da 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 da, like yes. that was actually a lot of that was reused from Star Trek Phase 2. So take it away, Nolan, please.
Okay, so it was pretty crazy how, so they were going to do a sequel series to Star Trek, and before they had that sweet motion picture budget, they had to work up some concepts and stuff like that. They had new designs pitched for the Enterprise. One of the design guys was actually a dude who had worked on Star Wars, blasphemy, and they had to work up with like some new costumes, new characters, new sets. That song you were talking about, it's fine. This is a little bit of a tangent here, but I associate that as someone who grew up with Next Gen. So when I heard that in motion picture, I was geeking out like a madman, because that to me is the definitive Star Trek theme. But I didn't know that that was actually going to be used for Phase 2. So Nolan. What?
I got to stop you again, because you are going to actually incur the wrath of quite a lot of fanboys with what you just said.
Okay. Well, you know what I have to say to them to say that? Bring it on, baby.
Oh, no. Okay. So the guy you just
best captain.
The guy you just casually dismissed as some designer, his name was Ralph McQuarrie. And he is probably one of the most renowned science fiction designers of the 70s and 80s. And I think maybe even I'm not sure how long he lived, but at any rate, he did all of the designs for Star Wars, all those iconic things that we know, like the Star Destroyer, Darth Vader,
he was talented.
He was that guy. He did Battlestar Galactica, and he also came in and did some designs for Star Trek, which no, I have not put up an image of Star Trek Discovery, the new TV series. That is actually
a pizza oven in space.
Yeah. So I mean, I love Ralph McQuarrie. I love his stuff. I just hate this design.
I agree. Okay. I don't hate it. I like it as one of those ships, you know, like in First Contact when all the ships are fighting off the Borg cube. I like it as being a nice little background ship. As the USS Enterprise, especially to be the second one that Kirk and his crew were going to pilot and be a definition of an inspiration for a generation. This ain't it. This is not it in the slightest.
No, it's unbalanced. The saucer section's too small for the new body section. It's the nacelles are too small. The original Enterprise is just, it's sleek and it's
perfect.
More art. Yeah. I think the original Enterprise is the best of all the ships. And by original, I mean NCC 1701, not the Archer Enterprise.
Oh yeah, that was quite the retcon. But you know, it just going on a bit of a side tangent here. Again, I think McQuarrie is just the bee's knees. I thought I think he's a fantastic designer. Like his Battlestar Galactica, I loved it. Everything he did in Star Wars, I loved it. All
Loved
the
his
stuff
work in Space Mutiny.
you say Ralph McQuarrie, I say I want to buy it. But everyone is entitled to, have a miss once in a while. And I think
Mulligan.
I think a mulligan. And I think this Enterprise was his. In much the same way that a famous designer by the name of Sid Mead, and I don't know if you guys have ever heard of him.
Mm-hmm.
Have you, Martin?
Yeah, I have.
Okay, so he was a futurist. He was the designer for. Actually, he worked on Star Trek the movie as well, but he also did Blade Runner, Tron, Aliens, 2010.
Really?
Like, he was a fantastic futuristic designer, very similar to McQuarrie. However, what he might be possibly very well known for is that he was brought on to design a Japanese TV series, a Gundam. I don't know if you guys have ever heard that word before, but it's the basically the Japanese equivalent.
It sounds like a match made in heaven.
You would think so. And so the Gundam series in Japan is it's been going on as long as Power Rangers, maybe even longer. And the designs, like, they always have these new TV shows which are set in various either in the future or in like alternate universes and the like. But every time they do one of these shows, the design of the main Gundam itself is always pretty standard. And I'm just going to pull up a photo of one right here. Like, it's always like a white robotic suit or sort of robotic figure, and it's got like a very distinct head with this like V fin on the top. It's got like a blue torso with red abs.
Very iconic.
And the face is very unique, like the mouth guard with the two sort of vents on it, the red chin, like that is pure Gundam. And so every time they made a new series, they would always adhere to this kind of design philosophy, except when they had Sid Mead come on to do his series, which is called Turn A Gundam. And he, bless his soul, created probably one of the goofiest Gundams that have ever been made. And this
How bad could it be? Whoa.
And so he gave it a mustache instead of a cool kind of samurai V fin. And I mean, this and the show itself is actually one of the best ones they've done. Like, when you watch it, you really get engaged. It's a fantastic TV series. I love Gundam stuff, but this design has been the source of controversy for decades among fans. Some thinking it's fantastic, others thinking it's just awful. And so, again, it just goes to show you that, like McQuarrie, other designers who are relatively famous can also have, as Martin put it, mulligans. So, all that to be said, what we had thrown up before was a photo of McQuarrie's concept for the Enterprise, and you can absolutely see that it was cribbed by Alex Kurtzman and the Star Trek Discovery folks. And to their credit, I think they cleaned it up quite well. It was the designer of the John Eaves. John Eaves was one of the main designers. He was the one who created the Enterprise E in the Star Trek The Next Generation movies. And he was brought on to make a lot of the ships in the Discovery TV series. And frankly, in my opinion, the ships were the only good thing about that entire series. So he took basically what this was, and he was able to make it look really nice. And I'm very impressed by what he was able to do by adding like lengthened nacelles and whatnot. But I am going off topic. I am diverging. I am derailing Nolan and everybody, and I apologize for that.
It is all good. Well, hey, this is an important thing to analyze, though, because one of the most pivotal things you can have in a Star Trek series is how good does the Enterprise look? And it's going to be the symbol of your show. And the reality was, it looked way too, I don't even know if I want to say Star Wars, like the paint's all wrong. It looks way too separated from the bottom of the ship. And
the bottom looks like a fat Star Destroyer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Could you guys imagine the lower angles of this thing? Like, you'd literally just be seeing the opening scene out of New Hope constantly. And if you're watching Star Trek, you don't want to just be thinking about Star Wars the whole time. Like, it's distracting.
The other thing that I took issue with this, and thankfully the Gene Roddenberry and I suppose the other creators of Star Trek Phase 2 did as well, is that this is supposed to be the original NCC 1701 Enterprise. It was always the case, either in Star Trek Phase 2 or in the motion picture, that this ship on its 5-year mission, and after the completion of that mission, was overhauled and refit. So I found
Oh man.
I found that I found that the
could you
ship
imagine
used,
that?
yeah, well, that's what I mean. Like, there's no way that this is I mean,
Well,
That would be a
that
bigger
does make
abomination.
that makes Decker's line in the Star Trek the Motion Picture about it's a completely different enterprise, you don't know your way around it anymore. That line makes more sense when you
Yeah.
think of this ship instead of Kirk's Enterprise.
that's a very good
I'd
point.
agree that if they redesigned it into that, that would have been even uglier when they redesigned Soldier Field. Ugh, that's terrible.
So as I think we were saying, cooler heads prevailed, and in fact, they went with a more, how should I put it, traditional choice when it came to design, and they stuck with the classic Enterprise design, which I would say is timeless.
Agreed.
Matt Jeffries, who's the one who designed the original ship, he just came up with, I mean, it's basically a pizza cutter with 2 lollipops on it, and yet somehow the darn thing works, right?
Yes, it's exploratory, if that's a word. It's welcoming, but it's also kind of alien to where it's like otherworldly to it. It just encapsulates everything that's fun about space travel. And I might argue, even this is coming from a TNG diehard, I might argue that the movie design, the redesigns that they made to the original series Enterprise, but kind of tweaking a few things to the movie, it might be the best Enterprise design to date. Probably my opinion. I'd have to look really close, but I feel like it refined it, but not too radical with the thrusters like 09, where I love that design too, but it still looks a little too round. I feel like everything just kind of comes across as authentic, industrial, futuristic. It's kind of the perfect Enterprise to me in the motion picture, which that we eventually got coming from Phase 2, and I think it went on a good track, in my opinion. What do you guys think?
I miss the dish instead of the blue orb, and
Oh,
I
really?
like the rounded nacelles instead of the rectangular ones. But I'm more of a '60s guy than a '70s guy when it comes to aesthetic.
That makes
Martin,
sense.
you are a man of culture, I see, because in fact, you are mirroring very much my own opinions of it. So again, the Trekkie fandom in general is, I would say, almost unanimous in their agreement that the Enterprise, as seen in Star Trek the Motion Picture and all of the subsequent sort of Star Trek original series films afterwards, is probably the best looking Star Trek ship ever made. And you know what? There's a lot.
Oh no, I'm a sheep.
No. There's a lot to be said for that. I think in my particular case, I love the fact that I do like the blue dish, or the blue inverted dish. I do like the fact that they added those 2 little red photon torpedoes on the neck. I've never been a big fan of the nacelles though, and I kind of missed those red lollipops. So what I really liked about the Star Trek Phase 2 Enterprise, and here I'm going to throw up some comparison photos here, if I can find where I squirreled them away, is
I'll say
that
this for motion a movie making point of view, it's probably easier to do the rectangular nacelles that don't have the rotating bit on the inside of the red circular front. You know what I'm talking about on the original nacelles. Without that rotation, it's probably easier to shoot the model.
Probably. And so in the Phase 2 model, again, it looks a lot more like a refit original series model. And it because that was one of the other things that okay, again, the movie Enterprise looks amazing, but when you start to actually kind of compare it to the original TV series model, it's not as apparent as when you look at the Ralph McQuarrie pizza cutter triangular thing, but it's very tough to reconcile the fact that these 2 ships are supposed to be the same thing. So the phase 2 model, I felt, kind of pulled it back a little bit and didn't get rid of the best parts of either one of those ships. Like, you still had the new updates, like the photon torpedo launcher at the neck. You had the inverted dish instead of the satellite dish sticking out. And you also had like the red colorful nacelles, which they went like the Bassard caps, which are at the front of the nacelles, and which they ultimately ended up going back to in the Next Generation and all the other TV shows after that, or movies and whatnot. But you still kind of felt that, you know what, maybe this actually is the same ship. And here I'm going to throw this up here because you can get an idea of the differences. So the top is the original series Enterprise, the medium is the phase 2 redesign, and then the bottom one is the motion picture Enterprise. So as a progression, you can kind of see like, yeah, okay, I can get it if it goes from step 1 to step 2 to step 3, but going from step 1 to 3 seems a bit too much almost. I don't know. What do you guys think?
No, it really encapsulates what phase 2 was going into the motion picture. Because for those watching, might be thinking like, why are we covering the motion picture so much in this video? Well, the motion picture was literally made into like a 2-hour movie, however long that movie was. It was based off the pilot episode from phase 2, the several episodes made for TV movie, whatever have you. It was integrated back into a movie, and basically there were a lot of concepts that were carried over. So it's natural to see how a lot of elements from phase 2 just kind of look like the pseudo working program for what would eventually come the motion picture. Back then they were working with, a more limited budget, and these ship designs, they might be iconic, but they take time to finalize and get right. If you've ever looked at some of the concept art of some of your favorite movies, you might look at them and be like, if they went with this film would have sucked. But it's cool to see where we came from. Going back to that, they didn't even know if they were going to get Kirk and Spock into this thing, let alone if
they didn't.
It was going to hit the same way.
They were getting Spock at one point. McCoy was having some troubles with his residuals and things like that. He was not going to be working with Paramount or with Roddenberry again.
Nimoy, you mean?
Yeah, Nimoy. Yeah.
So yeah, no, and that was very interesting. They weren't able to get Leonard Nimoy to come back for phase 2. So suddenly they no longer had arguably the most popular character of the first series, which was the Vulcan, Mr. Spock. So what do you do in that situation? Well,
you cancel the series.
No, you get another Vulcan. It's an entire planet full of these guys. And so enter Jean, or XON. I'm not sure quite how you spell his name, but he was already rocking a pretty nice mullet there. But
business in the front, party in the back.
Party in the back. So the conceit with Spock as a character was that he was half human, and he was constantly trying to suppress his human emotions. Whereas with Jean, I guess John, maybe, I don't know how you pronounce that. His whole shtick was going to be that he was going to try to get in touch with his emotions. So he was actively chasing after them.
Which means he was basically the pseudo, what would eventually evolve into Lieutenant Commander Data on Star Trek The Next Generation. Because
I never made that connection before. Wow, you're right.
Yeah. Oh, no, a lot of the characters were, because motion picture wasn't the only thing that this series evolved into, because they had a lot of good ideas here. I'm sure you'll be showing them some more of the kind of the behind the scenes work that was going into this series, but they had a lot of good ideas to keep it going. The captain in the motion picture, Decker, who is like there to be kind of like the guy Kirk's kind of replacing as the captain, and I can understand that. I'd be mad too. He would eventually, his ideas for him would basically evolve into one of my favorite Star Trek characters, Commander Riker in The Next Generation, as well as there was a girl. Okay, no, the girl.
Alia.
Yes, her. Her ideas would change a bit when the motion picture come around, and some of her ideas were reworked into Counselor Troy in Next Gen. So it almost kind of split. Phase 2 is canceled, but in one direction you had the motion picture and the Kirk movies, and then pretty soon afterwards you had The Next Generation in the 90s and the late 80s. So it's cool to see how this thing was trickling into other things and being reworked in radical ways. But I think most of the changes were for the better because Kirk's team got more of a budget, and then we got Next Gen, which was one of the greatest shows ever made.
Yeah, and so the character of Ilea, again, was also somebody who was supposed to be present in Phase 2. She was played by the actress Persis Kambata, and in Star Trek: The Motion Picture, she was an alien called a Deltan, who, as you said, Nolan, was an empath. And V'ger, the giant alien probe, gobbled her up.
Sorry, I had to do that.
And then spat her back out as a replicant of the original Ilea, who was basically an android. And so then there was some hot and heavy action between her and Commander Decker, and the rest is history. But the character herself, Persis Kambata, like the actress herself, was Miss India and a supermodel. And
really,
yeah, like quite stunning. And what I think, and this is something that I disagreed with in both Phase 2 and in the motion picture, in the sense that I have never found bald women attractive. I'm sorry, it's not me. And so I just don't get why they had to have her shave her head. And they didn't just slap on like a bald wig on her. Like they went whole hog. Like they shaved her head.
Oh, the poor girl. Oh no.
Yeah. So
dedicated
anyway,
for a role. She's so pretty with the black hair.
I'm glad that they, at least when they made the character of Counselor Troy, they didn't make them all bald as well.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm grateful for that too.
But they did make her mom bald.
What's right?
Her mom's bald. Lwaxana is bald. She wears a wig all the time.
Yeah. Yes, that's true. That's not like an alien trait. Like that's just her. So you just sent me this photo of a Mr. John Saxon, Martin. Do you want to tell us?
That's right. So yes, Roddenberry as a TV writer and creator of shows is intriguing to me. He a couple of times used John Saxon, the actor here, in different pilots for different shows. And usually he was playing a character named Dylan Hunt, who is somebody from a higher period of human civilization who is suddenly thrust forwards or backwards in time or whatever to some other more primitive time in human civilization and needed to show them the way. He looks so much like the actor who plays the character we're calling Jean.
David Gautreaux, but it's not the same guy. But
the same guy.
Did this guy always have the same name for his character?
John Saxon, I think he played two different Dylan Hunts in two different Roddenberry shows.
But it was always Dylan Hunt.
I'm pretty sure.
Oh,
and then
cool.
Dylan Hunt shows up again in another Roddenberry show that actually did get made, Andromeda.
That is neat. So the conceit there might be that he's a multi-dimensional traveler.
I knew it.
He's from Gallifrey.
Well, I'm just thinking more along the lines of Brandon Sanderson and his character Hoyd, who appears in basically all of his Cosmere novels, which I thought was kind of neat. But I didn't realize he was taking inspiration from Dylan Hunt. Cool.
Yeah.
I did not know that. Neat. So yeah, I mean, Phase 2, would it have done better than Star Trek: The Motion Picture? I don't know. I mean,
I don't think so.
Sorry, can I take the mic for a minute here?
Yeah.
Rock it like a vandal.
Right. Yeah. Yes. All right. Anyways,
rock it like a
what I'm going to say. Yes. So this might be a little bit of a spicy take. So please, if you are a sensitive Trekkie at home, please, I've probably already sent a bunch of them to an early grave right now with some of my takes on some things. So I apologize.
They really do prefer Trekker.
Trekker. You're not messing with me, right? That's a term. They prefer that?
Yeah, Trekkers.
Okay. All right.
I have never accepted that. Trekkie all the way.
Guys, I think I'm in the middle of a civil war right now. Oops. Anyways, No, I think Star Trek Phase 2, if it came out, it would have probably done pretty decent in the ratings for a little while, but I don't think it would have lasted very long. And I think it would have been one of those where people would look back on it kind of like how we look back on, I don't want to say Sequest, but like, what would something, Babylon 5? No, that's a little too good. Something that's kind of a little bit, I don't want to say mid-tier, but a little above mid-tier, to where it's not going to be in that public zeitgeist like
Viper?
how Star Trek. No, not Viper levels. That's too low on the radar. But
Viper is in the zeitgeist. Dang you!
We made it in the zeitgeist. That's what we did. But no. So I just don't think it would have. I think it would have come back like how, because everything needs to come back now. I'm sure there would have been a Star Trek reboot or two if this came out. But I think we really looked out into the best timeline, because we got to see the best of Kirk and his crew with the motion picture getting the budget it did, and eventually Wrath of Khan, probably the most popular Star Trek movie out there. But even more so, Next Generation is probably the most, I know some people are going to disagree on this, but it's probably the most popular Star Trek series. And it's very, what's that?
It is.
Okay. All right. So we're in agreement with that. And I think unless Phase 2 could have really hit home the writing that Next Gen was known for, I think we hit gold, because we got to see the best of Kirk and the best of what else Star Trek could be aside from the bridge of the original crew. And so many franchises, we've seen it a lot in recent times. People try to, we've seen it with the Star Wars sequel trilogy, for example. They try to pay homage to the original, but do their own thing and completely fall apart. It happens. It's harder to make a great sequel than it is to make a terrible sequel. And I think this would have been a solid follow-up, but without the budget of the motion picture, I just don't think that the audiences at the time, because I saw a motion picture for the first time, admittedly, a little very recently here. I grew up on Next Gen, and I thought I was going to hate it. I heard its nickname was the slow motion picture. It's boring. It's terrible. I heard it was a no-go. I honestly loved it. It was very weird, but I like a weird abstract movie, and I love the themes and the plot line of it. But it's not easily accessible for everybody. But I think it still was able to be a financial juggernaut for two reasons. One, Star Wars was huge, so they got their wish. They got to capitalize on all that Star Wars money when the motion picture came out. But two, the effects were, while dated, were very eye-catching. There's a lot of different colors. The evil dark cloud thing was really cool, even if you're looking at 2 minutes longer than you really should be. But it was fun. I don't think with a TV show budget, and even with some really good writing, I just don't think this would have caught on to make Star Trek what it is today. And I think we're just in a really good spot. We had 6 great Kirk movies. We had Next Gen and eventually Deep Space Nine and all that. And I just don't think Phase 2 could have stuck the landing like we did. But I am so appreciative for it, because it literally gave us episodes of Next Gen that were reworked. It gave us the motion picture. I think we're in the best timeline, although we might not feel like it now that we have Discovery, but we were for a little while there. What do you guys think?
Well, Nolan, I'm going to be pressing the button on the Large Hadron Collider and resetting everything. I'm sorry. No.
Okay, just save. Do me a favor. Just save Picard. That's all you have to do. But
yes,
if you want to,
I'll save Picard season 1 and 2. You're right, just for you.
No.
But in all,
do not give Star Trek to Kathleen Kennedy, please.
Ooh, that's a good idea. I like that. In all seriousness, Star Trek: The Motion Picture, it was basically the 1970s version of Batman versus Superman. And what I mean by that is, it technically was a success. It set a number of box office records for highest opening weekend gross. It beat the 3-day weekend opening of Superman, 1978 movie. And in its third weekend, it beat the weekend gross of the reissue of Star Wars. So it did well. It was nominated for 3 Academy Awards, which I know Batman and Superman weren't. But the movie itself was still considered a solid disappointment by Paramount. They felt that,
Really?
Yeah.
they were not happy with it.
They spent a lot of
Is
money
the
on it.
most financially successful one before 09 happened? Like of all the original Trek movies? Like,
No, the
really?
most successful one is Voyage Home with the whale movie.
Yes.
Oh, you're right. Oh, that's
So
why they
far
did
and away.
original. You're right.
The Star Trek, like the motion pictures budget was 44 million, which they had wrapped up the costs of phase 2 into as well. And at that point, it was the largest budget of any film made within the United States at the time. And so they were estimating that it had to make at least 2 to 3 times its budget just to be profitable. So it did not make that much. It made a lot, but it didn't make enough, I think, for them to completely get out of the hole. And the audience reception as well was pretty mixed, kind of negative. Like it had a 53% score from 57 critics. It came out like at a 6 out of 10. People thought it was, as you said, kind of a slog, kind of boring, dialogue heavy.
It was a rehash of some original series episodes.
Yeah, and it was a rehash of the Nomad episode.
Yeah.
So in fact, Star Trek the Motion Picture almost kind of killed the entire Star Trek franchise on the big screen. And it wasn't
Unless they
until
could find a way to do it cheaper.
Yes. And Martin Diana, I think you might want to talk about that.
Yeah. Well, Space Seed, which was a great episode, gave birth to Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan, which ultimately is a much smaller story. You don't have a galaxy consuming probe coming towards the Earth.
Death Cloud.
Exactly. It's a personal story. It's smaller. It's a lot more literary in nature. There's a lot of allusions to Moby Dick and Paradise Lost and things like that. And it relies a lot more heavily, and maybe this is why they didn't do it, on William Shatner's acting ability. He really has to emotionally carry the movie. He can't just swagger and do his Captain Kirking. So
isn't Wrath of Khan considered like one of the only times he was actually playing it straight and not just kind of memeing the whole time?
Yes, and I saw an interview with the director about that, and he said he figured out pretty early on that if he ticked off Shatner and made him do things over and over and over again, eventually Shatner would just get frustrated and tired and give him a straight delivery instead of a Captain Kirk delivery.
And that was Nicholas Meyer who was the director. So so Star Trek The Wrath of Khan was basically a Hail Mary to salvage the Star Trek movie franchise. They reused the models, they reused a lot of the special effects, they reused a lot of the sets. They had very few outside sets. Like, I mean, they were all set on space stations and so on and so forth. And then the entire battle at the end is set on 2 separate bridges. Like when you start to look at this thing, you really recognize how limited they were by budget, and yet they pulled off a miracle. Basically, like that film completely reinvigorated the franchise and set off Search for Spock, The Voyage Home, The Final Frontier, and then Undiscovered Country. Like in a lot of ways, Star Trek 2 was really the first movie of the original cruise motion picture event. And it also
it's a very weird movie series, because like it's not very often you see a franchise where the first film and the second film are so radically different. And even though the first one was a success, the second one is really what propelled it forward. And like
You're describing Star Wars.
No, I'd say the first one was the chief, like, I mean, because here's the thing is that motion picture then still, if it could have been one and done. Star Wars, that thing, Empire, I think could have flopped and Star Wars still gotten an A+ sequel. Forbid that world, but I think it would have been salvageable. With
George Lucas was so unsure of Star Wars that he had another movie of Luke and Leia on a swamp planet by themselves that would be much cheaper to film as a possible second movie.
Wow. And that was adapted into a book by Alan Dean Foster.
Yeah.
You never know what's going to click, do you? Because it's like it's funny because comparing the two, like you take motion picture, it's this big, where do we go when you've explored all the universe? What's the future of humanity? It's a very deep story to it. Whereas Wrath of Khan, like you were saying earlier, Hangry, it's more, or Martin, whoever, it's a lot more of a personal story, but that does very well with audiences, as we've seen with especially a lot of movies here recently. If you have one where you can really grip a sense of family, a sense of loyalty to your crew, you can really impact. And I think that's why I think Wrath of Khan overall was considered such a better movie, because I think it's one that people could just connect more when you're not weird like me and like movies with the death cloud.
No, I
Well,
like a good slow science fiction movie. I think the motion picture is fine. It's good.
I'll tell you, when I was watching the motion picture, um, I had a VHS, and I would watch it on the VCR. I know these are strange terms that I'm using that are unfamiliar.
Did you use the fast forward button a lot?
No, where I'm going with this is that that 15 minutes of them flying around the Enterprise when it was in space dock, I think I might have burned a hole in that VCR tape. I just kept watching and watching. I am huge into that ship stuff. But one of the things that I'll be forever grateful to the Wrath of Khan for is the fact that they got rid of the uniforms that they used in the motion picture. And
yes.
to this
oh my gosh,
yes. With that.
To this day, these uniforms make me feel weirdly uncomfortable.
They are just, I mean, I didn't know if beige was in that day, but
it was the 70s.
Oh man, it's like so drained of the colors. Like, whoa.
Nothing redeeming about these uniforms, and I challenge anyone, if you guys are listening to this, if there are people who like these uniforms, please explain why in the comments, because these are like 70s disco pajamas, and not in a good way.
I think
I just
most
there's
of the
just
comments
too much bones chest hair for me. I'm sorry, just too much.
No, Perseus gets the same color though.
That's true. But sorry, what were you going to say, Martin?
I was going to say most of the comments in favor of this uniform are going to have to do with Kambata's legs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's about the best thing I can say about this.
Okay. I'm gonna clarify that, in that obviously Ilea, as the alien V'ger's probe ambassador, is not wearing a regulation uniform. But I mean, look at Sulu there. Good gravy. Look at
I liked the uniforms when they were on like Earth, and it's like, ooh, and life goes around a bit. I guess the 24th century brought sexy back, like it was just Timberlake. I like that. But when we start getting to, official like admiral and captain uniforms, I'm like, man, this looks like something you get out of Goodwill. Like that did not age
the only
good at all.
The only semi decent one I would argue is Admiral Kirk's uniform, and that's just because of the two-tone there. But
the Sansa belt buckle drives me crazy.
So for those who aren't aware, in Star Trek Wrath of Khan, they actually got a proper costume designer, and they came up with.
Bring it up. Thank you. Those are beautiful. Those are amazing. Those might be the best Star Trek uniforms, period. And this comes from a TNG diehard.
I would agree with that. Like, these are just perfect.
Remember, Picard gets to wear one of these in TNG.
So. Yeah, but without the neck collar, though.
It was a great. Isn't that the one where Q wakes up in the bed with him? It's hilarious.
It's the one where he gets stabbed by the Nausicaan.
Yep. And he sees what his life was like.
Love it.
If he only had courage.
Whoever designed these costumes, wait, am I about to make someone mad? Did I?
No, I think this is okay. I think this is okay.
Okay. Whew. Well, I just want to say, whoever it is, if they're still around, I want to hug them, because good job. Good job.
Well, guys, I mean, I think we've kind of done a pretty good job of giving a quick overview of Star Trek Phase 2 and what it could have been and what it was. And
There was
What-
one thing I wanted to say about it, though, before we
yes,
wrap up.
please do.
Star Trek Phase 2 got killed off by a lot of different things, but one of the biggest ones was that it was supposed to be the cornerstone of a brand new Paramount network.
That's right. Yeah.
They were going to get Monday Night Football because the NFL decided they wanted a primetime show and they were going to put it on Monday night. They put it up for bid with all of the networks, and Paramount was trying to get it. Hughes, I think, was trying to get it, but Paramount ended up buying the Hughes network, and they were going to make this Star Trek series their cornerstone. But it never materialized, and so that's a lot of what killed off Star Trek Phase 2.
Which is unfortunate, but I mean, again, you never know. Maybe it would have been good. I don't know. Possibly. I think just for the sheer fact that we would have had more episodes with at least William Shatner, DeForest Kelly, and the other
Are we
classic.
sure we would have had Shatner, though?
We would have had Shatner because, again, the character of William Decker as the sort of the more brass and impulsive first officer, that guy eventually became Commander William Riker, right? But it was always the case that Kirk was going to be the lead of the series. Anyway, what may have been, but it was pretty neat. It was kind of cool to see where things went. And as you said, Nolan, I think we are living in the best timeline, because in a lot of cases when these types of TV shows are conceived and then canceled, I'm sure Lou could talk about this a lot. That's it. Like they're done. They're gone. But we didn't lose a TV show. We got a movie.
And if we didn't lose this TV show, we wouldn't have gotten TJ Hooker.
There you go. Is that a good thing?
I didn't like TJ Hooker.
Okay. Well, guys, any final thoughts on Star Trek Phase 2?
You know, I just gotta say, if anything, my phrase would be, I know I'm talking to an inanimate show right now, but a kind of a dead show, but if I had anything to say, it would be thank you. Thank you for leading to, I think, the best television show ever made in Next Gen. I think that like I was watching Devil's Due again the other day to prep for this. I had seen it before, but I just wanted to watch it again because I just love the episode. And it's crazy how like that storyline came from Phase 2, and without it, this show, I don't know, like it's hard for me to picture my life without the Next Generation. And I have to say thank you to this show for making it happen. And with all the memories of those who, you know, especially those you got to witness like the original series movies, you know, on the big screen or on the little CRT TVs, you know, growing up in the early 2000s on like VHS or DVD reruns and such, or even if you're watching on a streaming service now, when you make quality, it's everlasting. It doesn't just feel like a corporate product. And, you know, corporate stuff gets involved, you know, like the reason this show fell apart in its original creative vision was because corporate reasons. Like, as Martin was saying, the whole network plan fell apart. But this is one of those times where the art got to shine through, and instead of completely killing Star Trek forever, it gave us to where Star Trek is now the cultural phenomenon it is. And it may not ever be as huge and do the numbers that Star Wars did, but everyone knows what Star Trek is. And if they can return, you know, to quality stories that make us want to live on the bright sides of humanity and the future and stuff, then this show has done its job. And there's so many things that were inspired because of Star Trek. And I think Phase 2 probably deserves more credit than what we realize of how much it has changed a lot of people's lives for the better.
And may the force be with us, everyone.
I can't think of a better way to end that. So, colleagues,
you're a wizard, Harry. You're a wizard.
You're a wizard, Harry. Colleagues, that was a wonderful discussion. Thank you so much. Members, if you were a fan of Star Trek Phase 2 or just Star Trek in general, and we're not talking about the Alex Kurtzman Trek, but
who's that?
Who's that? Let us know. Drop us your comments down below. We would love to hear from you. We would love to see what your thoughts are on, would Star Trek Phase 2 have been the better choice over Star Trek the Motion Picture? Is them's fighting words? Come fight with us. Tell us. And if you have any other suggestions for Lost Media to cover, we were always open and love to entertain them. On that note,
read those comments. Keep them up.
Yes. And so on that note, we will bid you adieu. And until next time, let us all get lost.
Get lost.
Yep,
Get lost and prosper.
Get lost. Get lost.
We hope you enjoyed this presentation of The Lost Guys here on That Pod Plays. Be sure to subscribe for more content like it, and you can become a member at That Part Place here on YouTube to see more of The Lost Guys every Friday as soon as the guys record an episode. Let us know your thoughts on this intriguing topic in the comments down below. Please comment, like, and share this video, and don't forget to subscribe to That Park Place Podcasts Online, your source for exclusive content and highlights from WDW Pro, The Pro Show, and That Park Place for all the news that should be fun.